It's understanding everything that's within your control that can influence health or that can influence performance. There's a question I always ask people, and it is, what's the cost? So the simplest version of that is, give me a meal plan to follow.
Right.
But you have no infrastructure. So that's why the meal plan never works. On an elite athlete in Dublin who converted from an omnivore diet to a vegan diet. We studied him over the course of the season and we tracked all of his data. All of the indicators were incredibly positive. However, it was an enormous amount of work.
Hi, my name is Ronan Kennedy and this is the Ronan Kennedy podcast. On this show, I'm going to be talking to professionals from various different careers, industries and backgrounds to learn about what they do, how they do it and how they got into it.
So, Daniel, thanks so much for popping in to chat to us today to tell us a little bit about yourself, your career journey and maybe some next steps.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. I know you're an extraordinarily busy man, family, business, and you're very active in the sports realm as well, right?
Yeah, I'm not as active in the sports realm as I want to be. I was there for a long time. It's not like this mourning of a past professional identity. It's just that sport is something that gives me enormous excitement and energy. I love performing. I love playing. I love thinking about what helps me perform, how others perform. I think the big challenge is having been in real world-class environments. You're never replacing that. So what version of it can you still connect to? And I've actually done a lot of thinking about that in recent weeks, very recent weeks. I got a couple of photos from marathon runners who completed the Dublin Marathon and a couple of people who did adventure races. And this is not this opportunity to give a backhanded compliment to myself. It really isn't. But it was just, they were thanking me for the help and support. And I thought to myself, that's how it used to feel all the time. Not that, athletes would thank you from time to time, but it was that you felt a little bit more connected to what they'd just achieved for themselves. And that's a really nice feeling.
Is that not there anymore?
No.
How come?
Not like that, it's not. Because if I think about the extreme euphoria of being in Bilbao when Leinster won a Champions Cup, or being in Croke Park in a September third week of September, and you're here in Dublin or the rare all times, and the cheers and the lads run. That's a whole different world from sitting in your home office, talking to somebody about their performances and their goals, and hearing about the county final that they played in, or hearing about the marathon that they ran in Berlin.
Yeah, I suppose you're so deeply embedded in the team culture for like a year or 2 years or 3 years, right? That it's like...
Or 10.
Or 10, right?
Yeah.
The connection's on a whole different level. You know everyone personally. You spend so much time together on the buses and on the planes and everything, the training ground. Yeah. Can I ask you, I suppose, to start a little bit, why did you get into nutrition?
Yeah, I think as time goes by, you realize that it's understanding everything that's within your control that can influence you positively and that can influence health or that can influence performance. But it really starts, and I've actually probably haven't stripped it away. I've talked an awful lot about the influence of my grandparents, my grandmothers in particular. I talked a lot about local heroes and the influence of them playing sport at a high level and want to replicate that. And that nutrition was I made that connection early enough. But I think it probably, on a personal level, probably is a bit deeper. And what I mean it's a little bit deeper, it's like, how can I, at a very young age, I was very conscious of my physicality. Really conscious. I used to look at other boys and look at older men, and it was about representing a certain type of frame and masculinity, and I drew that connection with nutrition very early on. Like when we were putting in the turf, I wanted as many sods on that in the bag or on the trailer, the wheelbarrow as possible. And I heard about how strong my dad was growing up. These are the kind of things that you're hearing. That's a measure of your presence,
your manliness.
Yeah.
So you connected that nutrition to being manly, to almost working out from the time you were a kid, so you could be more like your dad.
Yeah, my dad, but also I was 18 months when I started kicking a football. I was absolutely football mad. I was a typical kid who played, in school, and then I kicked a ball against a wall for 4 to 6 hours every single evening.
So crazy passionate and dedicated from the start. I feel you're still like that. I feel you bring that intensity to every single thing you do. Is that fair?
Do you know, I don't mean to pivot, but the intensity I would have clammed up a little bit about when people would make that comment. Oh, you're very intense. I would have always felt, no, I'm not intense. I'm relaxed. I'm easygoing. I love the crack. But when it comes to, I guess it's an intensity. It's a competitiveness. I don't know.
Or it's a focus, but I wouldn't see it as a bad thing. I would see it as a hyper-focused, which allows you to achieve all sorts of results. Mad attention to detail that I expect would be super useful if you're a high-performance nutritionist.
I don't know. There's a question I always ask people who I talk to about their commitments, and it is, what's the cost? And there was a major cost throughout my life to that. Again, I don't like the word even obsession, intensity, but there was a cost, because it's really hard to live up to the effort. It's really hard when the work that you put in doesn't get the results that you anticipate or expect. And it takes an awful long time to recalibrate that type of intensity.
Mm-hmm. So like the passion you're putting into your sport or into your nutrition, you felt it didn't always come to fruition?
Definitely not.
And then that leaves you with these emptiness, uncomfortable feelings.
Yes. Yeah. Deeply uncomfortable feelings, because if I think about the effort that I put in, and then I think about some of the results or some of the experiences in sport that I would have seen others around me get, and other opportunities that I would have seen other footballers get that I didn't get, it makes you bitter, makes you resentful. And it's very unhealthy as a young person to feel like that. And my answer, and I have talked about this a huge amount, and I talk to the young athletes that I work with a lot about this. My answer was always push harder. Always there's more work to be done. There's always, I will figure this out because I will work harder.
When you reflect on that now, what are your thoughts on that mindset?
Well, there's two sides to it, because you wouldn't be the person that you are, and you wouldn't have figured these things out if you hadn't had those experiences. And I'm incredibly grateful for being able to figure it out. I mean, I know how hard it felt to be in those situations, and to be bitter and to always wonder why certain elements or certain opportunities were not presented to me the way that I would have expected. But when you're able to transfer it to the other side, and then when you're able to help others who may also feel like that, I feel like that, life has changed, and my outlook on life has changed so much since that transition started to happen. And being able to utilize that energy in the best possible way is remarkably fulfilling. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? I wonder, is it a journey that's necessary to become who you are now? Or is it something that you would hope your kids could bypass in their own personal development?
Well, bringing my children into it definitely changes my thought process on it, because I do want them to know the value of hard work, and I do want them to understand that things in life, like the great opportunities and things in life, don't just happen, and they don't just present themselves. And I feel an enormous depth of gratitude for what I was exposed to with and I don't say this lightly, with a shovel in my hand, with the experience on the bog, in bringing bales of hay in at 4:00 in the morning before the rain comes down, or moving horses at 12 or 13 that only grown men should be moving. And like they were all tough, but like, Jesus, like the resilience that it builds in you. You feel like you really are capable of dealing with a lot of shit.
It's a long way from corporate talks in Salesforce and matcha lattes and stuff like that, isn't
Exactly. Or sencha, whatever the hell I was drinking yesterday. It is, but I still put that first slide up about who I am, and that I come from Sligo. I am a sheep farmer, and I'm still a sheep farmer, and that's who I am. And it's not like, it genuinely isn't like I'm carrying this take it or leave it, fucking this is who I am attitude. I absolutely amn't. But for a very long time, it was your identity is attached to having the blue colours of Leinster and Dublin associated with you. And I take great pride in that experience, what I've taken from it, what I've learned from it. But the core of who I am was influenced long before I stepped into those environments.
How much do you think that is part of your work as a performance nutritionist, that mindset, that resilience you've developed over the years?
A very large part of it.
Just, if you're entertaining me with this question, what percentage would you say, when you kind of break it down, you think, because I'd imagine like a lot of the athletes are quite educated on nutrition themselves, right? Or at least they're on that journey and they're super focused. If you were to say what percentage you think is like performance nutrition versus mindset and the psychological tools that you're bringing to, or even the presence that you would have to hold them accountable?
So I think it's an incredibly difficult question to answer, because it's a very small percentage for athletes who live a certain way, who have the detail in their preparation, who have the detail in their recovery, and have paid attention to it maybe their whole lives because their mum or their dad valued it from a very young age. Nutrition is a pillar of a performing athlete. And if it's not invested in, you'll compromise your overall preparation and overall recovery. Like, you can't perform to your best if you're not investing in that pillar. However, in my experience, it was always the other variables that brought about the greatest attention to each one of these pillars, and in even nutrition. So why was my job so fulfilling? It was because there's a huge value placed on it by the people who are leaders. Jim Gavin, Leo Cullen, these men, and within these environments, the Johnny Sextons and the Johnny Coopers, and these athletes saw value on it. So the next thing is that my conversation with them is important. But if you step outside of these environments, what you recognize very quickly is that all of those external values and that value piece is missing in people's life. And then they want to have this extraordinary result without any of those other things being really thought about. So the simplest version of that is, give me a meal plan to follow.
Right.
Because that's the solution. Yeah. But you have no infrastructure. You have none. So that's why the meal plan never works. It's not that the meal plan is redundant. It's that these are principles that need to be applied in your life.
It's the foundation.
It's the foundation that needs to be built. So the percentages are very hard to apply, but what I will say, I can answer, is that I had a conversation with a young man this morning who's heavily involved in sport, very ambitious. He's come to me to lose weight. Nutrition in an hour and 10-minute conversation was talked about for less than 3 minutes. So I don't know what the percentage is.
Wow.
But that gives you the kind of context. People need to be ready, really ready to start thinking about the detail of nutrition. And people's expectations and understanding of what influences their decisions is what matters most. And I say this all the time. Once you get all this other stuff and shit in place, nutrition is so easy because you're not being distracted. You're not thinking about what Ronan is eating for lunch, or you're not looking at social media, because you're really clear on what you need and what you enjoy and what's important to you.
So you're really doing a deep dive on their personal values and their values as an athlete. How much value do you put on nutrition? How much value do you put on your health? How committed are you to this process? Those types of...
Yeah, and words are irrelevant. I want to understand the action. You asked me about percentage there. Let's talk about what good looks like for you. And let's talk about how much time you actually invest. What is your priority? Oh, your health is you say your health's important? Oh, yeah, very important. How much time do you spend on it? Very quickly, you can recognize where the pitfalls are. So people think, right, I've come to you, I want to lose weight. What almost everybody does is tell me what their best body composition and weight looks like. It could have been 15 years ago and 20 kilos difference, but that's what they'll talk about. And that's what they'll talk about getting back to.
So getting back to that previous
we got to get back to there.
What's going on there?
And then you look at how they live, and they expect a meal plan is solving all of that. You can see the mismatch very, very quickly.
Where are we getting stuck? Where are we getting stuck? Are we not thinking about it? Are we not prioritizing our nutrition? Are we having unrealistic expectations because maybe we feel we've been sold that, just have this shake and, follow this meal plan? Because the meal plan is a very tactical tool, right? It's like if everything else is good, if your strategy on the foundation is good, implementing the tactics is a whole lot easier. But where are people really getting stuck? Is it just not having the awareness and actually prioritizing it for themselves, and then you enter the frame and do that? Or is it really that they just don't know what food to eat?
It's never about the food. It's almost never about not knowing. So you ask somebody to describe a really good day. Marvelous. The detail. Well, why aren't you doing it then? That's the bigger question. And they'll say, I don't know. I just don't know. They'll come up with time, life, busy, kids. It's not those things either. But what I love when somebody needs to be ready for the conversation. But there is evidence in everybody's life, because everybody has had a certain level of success. It mightn't be in nutrition, might be in exercise, but very often it's in their work. Talk to me about a successful project. Talk to me about why did you get promoted? Talk to me about a successful phase you had with the business. Why'd you have it? Detail, energy, planning, reflection, goal setting, very clear timelines, lots of conversations. And you can think about all of the different components of what brought that success. So you had this extraordinary, 30 million turnover. Wow. Now you want to lose 10 kilos. How much energy and thought and planning and organization has gone into all of the components?
And if you'd done as much as you'd done
for
that 30 million, you would have.
How would you be performing? How would you be feeling?
Yeah.
So what is your priority? Because everything is suggesting that it's not your health and it's all of these other things. People say, oh, it is my health, and it's an alignment. It's a clarity, but I am never judgmental about this, because I am equally guilty of been caught in these different situations and these circumstances myself in different ways. We are wired a certain way, and that's why it's such a great space to work, because the art of conversation and connection around this, you can really empower people to take that responsibility once that they have these moments where they go, oh, geez, it makes an awful lot of sense.
Oh, you're right. Damn it.
And then it doesn't matter about what I think. And that's what I always say.
Yeah.
It's absolutely irrelevant. What matters is how you feel, what you think. Now that you have the information and you've got a framework, are you ready to do it? And that's why I said to you in our previous conversations that people have said, this is life-changing. And why is it life-changing? Because it crosses all different aspects of your life. You start to really pay attention to things in a very different way. You start thinking about the people in your life, who's positively influencing you, who takes that energy from you. You think about your work situation, people who help you problem solve. I'm not breaking any, I won't use any names. That client I'm telling you about, he made a reference to college work. And he said, oh my God, he said, just drives me nuts. He said, you know, we're so heavily judged and marked on some of the projects, but he said, we're not well taught. He said, like, we don't have that support. He says, it drives me crazy. You know, you'd be very disillusioned. And I said, when you're in those moments, I said, what's the solution? And he said, I don't know. And I said to him, is there anybody within the group that is able to, because everybody has these people, that's able to diffuse it? And he goes, oh my God. He goes, yeah. He says, a fella called Michael. He said, we even take the piss out of him, but he's so funny. He said, as soon as we get outside, he's like, lads, will you all relax? And he's from he's from the north, and he's a funny accent. And he said, we just seem to feel better after he diffuses it and goes, look, it'll be grand, you know. And I said, it's about paying attention to Michael. And it's about not paying attention to this person over here that just wants to berate the lecturer and the situation. What good is that?
It's like a nice metaphor for the awareness that you bring to all your clients, right? Michael is the positive values that you want to incorporate into your life, and that other person is those values you want to move away from. I think so often we can have things that are really important to us, like, and they sound lovely, right? You can go into a conference room and you can talk about it and go, oh my God, this is brilliant. I feel wonderful now. But then going out and implementing them in the real world is so much harder, right? Because now we have to make hard choices. We might even have to engage in a little bit of conflict or difficult conversations. It can be uncomfortable, and there can even be pain involved. Like, I speak to a lot of people about their work, for hours a day, and there's pain attached to work, right? If you don't get it done, either a client or your boss or a manager, someone's coming to you and saying, listen, this isn't good enough. Whereas when you think about your health, well, it's only you, right? So you can kind of like say, well, I'll do it tomorrow. And it kind of gets put into second or third place. So the accountability seems to be a huge thing in terms of health. But I also I was doing a values workshop with a few people there 2 days ago. And it was about, we weren't just talking about, well, what are the things that you're valuing, but what are also the other things that you're moving away from, right? Because if you always want to be healthy, but you also want to have comfort all the time, and you think, well, I want to sit on the couch and be comfortable, but also I want to be ripped to have a six pack and I want to, get onto the team. Well, which one are you prioritizing more? And often we say this one, but in reality, it's that other one. So being able to push away from that, I think, is a super big thing, and having the accountability from other people, because that's one of the things, right? Accountability is one of those uncomfortable things where someone goes, but did you actually do it?
I have words now in the client journey. Doesn't matter whether it's an event or a one-to-one or a program. We've words written underneath the process. So it's 6 phases or 10 stages, and there's different stages in each phase. And under the first phase is the word uncomfortable, because it is so important. If there is no discomfort, something's up. You're not being asked the right questions, or you're not asking the right questions. And like, one of the things that, again, we would have talked about in the past is all of the really good stuff in my life came from discomfort. Mm-hmm. It's about not punishing yourself or not seeking out too much of it and not being aware of what you can tolerate.
It's super interesting.
But there is a level of discomfort for evolution that's needed. And I can sense it about myself when we're not there. And I can also sense when I'm speaking with the client, where's the tolerance? Because that tolerance level is really important.
Isn't that a key balance to get right? You don't want to go extreme one way where you're only uncomfortable and now you're detrimental to your own mental health because you're just, you're doing this terrible, you're doing that terrible.
Yeah.
But equally the other side, it's fine, we'll do it tomorrow, don't worry, you've had a hard day.
Yeah.
Have some cookies and some cake and don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You can miss the gym again.
Yeah.
So it's like striking that balance.
Yeah.
I think in nutrition, it's the cheat day is the kind of common phrase, but it kind of goes across other elements of life as well, right?
Yeah. And I'm hearing more. I think I'm in a bit of obviously the people I engage with and things that I'm interested in, I'm hearing an awful lot of people talking about the same thing. But this whole identity and who we are and really understanding ourselves, there is so much in that, and there's so much that you'll figure out and that you'll be able to understand in terms of choices and actions once you know yourself. Because there's an extraordinary thing that we've got inside us, our instinct, our gut, this undefinable thing that's most often right about these choices and these decisions. It's like that kind of decision where, when you're feeling really shit and you're really sick or you're really tired, and it's that question, it's a very simple example, but is it right to train? You usually know. You usually know.
Yeah.
If you're too sick, it's stupid to train.
Yeah, you're too sick.
You're too sick.
Yeah, go to bed.
But there's times where, that injury isn't bad enough to stop you. That is a bit of a sniffle that you're talking about.
Yeah.
You can train.
Yeah.
Don't blow the front doors off it, but you can move. You can do something.
You can do some sort of session.
You can.
Yeah.
You got to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Or you're making an excuse and you're saying you're sick.
When you're talking to clients, athletes, business leaders, right? You talk, they're your kind of groups, is that right?
Yeah.
How receptive are they to a performance nutritionist, to Daniel Davey, talking to them about this? Or do you find like they're open? They're just like, obviously he's worked with tons of high performance athletes, Dublin, Leinster, or do you find anyone is trying to say, well, you just tell us about the nutrition and we're going to go to someone else for the psychology and the mindset? Do you get resistance? Is that a tough question?
No, it's not a tough question. But I think that if I was a little bit less comfortable with where I am, it would be. That's the truth. So I will come back to that, but I will answer that I did ag science as my primary degree, and I left it out of so many of my CVs when I was asked for bios. And there's one actual friend who used to call me out on it. He's like, I noticed when you did that you left out that you put down science. Because I was so conscious of being in certain positions, like with Leinster Rugby, people constantly asking me about, how did you get there? Ag science was your starting point? What the fuck? I thought people who did ag science were just worked in the farming or the agricultural industry. Now, of course, I can talk about it being the most extraordinary start to my career, because you're linking in the realest form farm to fork, and you can bridge a gap that so few people can. And if you're asking me about a career path, my God, am I grateful for mine. But I still went on for a couple of reasons. And even after I was in those positions with Dublin and Leinster, secured in the positions, I still went on and did my postgrad in performance and sports nutrition, an international recognized qualification.
Yeah.
Because I still didn't want that to be a gap. So when you ask me that question, I'm really clear about boundaries when I'm speaking with people, and I'm able to create very clear strategies and all of the principles very clearly connect to people's health and to the decisions that they make around their health. So I don't work with people as a grief counselor or a therapist for dealing with gambling or alcohol or serious mental health illness. So the experience and skills that I have been developed with better choices in our lifestyle. Now, they definitely overlap hugely in that if you are not sleeping well, exercising, eating well, all of these things have implications for your mental health. And they are used to, even if it is people who are suffering from depression or anxiety, they're still the things that are used. But I know the boundaries and where I'm operating. And I suppose to very directly answer your question, I think people can feel the clarity of that when they're working with me. It's
you always come across as having tons of clarity about what you're talking about and certainty about your position and your identity. Like when I think about where you've come, even in terms of like, you know, maybe 10 years ago when we were working in a small office together in Ballycoolan, you know, you were starting to take photos and putting them on Instagram, and I don't know, it's 140, 50 odd thousand followers later, maybe 60 odd thousand followers later. I think it's a really interesting journey because you have to, well, I would imagine, maybe you can tell me, but the identity and getting comfortable with putting yourself out there and getting comfortable with the vulnerability, because I think nutrition, for me, when I read about nutrition or listen to podcasts about nutrition or watch, you know, shows about it, it feels to me like money, religion, politics, and nutrition, things where everyone's got an opinion and everyone's pretty sure they're right. So it always feels super emotive to me. So whenever I see your stuff on Instagram, I always wonder about the journey you've gone on to get that comfort and especially with that vulnerability. Do you feel, how was that?
really hard. Really, really, really. I can't explain how hard. And you mentioned the values part and the workshop that you did. I think there's phases in your career where you have to move certain directions and hear things that are very uncomfortable in that whole journey. And you have to decide what you're going to do. And that's really tough. Jesus, like, that's so tough. So tough when you're being told. I've written about it, or even written about it recently. You know, this stuff. People are judging you very critically. I remember being told, and like I always give this stuff because I know listening to it, and there will be people who listen to it and they think, how did somebody who cares say this type of stuff? But somebody said to me that I remember getting a piece of video feedback when I started doing video content. Daniel has the potential to be one of the leading voices in science and nutrition in the country, and he is massively undermining himself at the moment. That was when the whole thing started, like when I started to put my face and voice and thoughts out. Was
this a public statement by an influential person?
No,
or
no,
this was
privately.
A private conversation?
Private conversation from some. And like, I would openly talk to these people, well, maybe not, like I wouldn't go and seek it out, but like that is such an important part of this whole process. Like, you know, if I wasn't able for that, I had no right going this direction.
To take that criticism and to crack on regardless.
But I can't tell you how hard it was.
Do you think that was coming from a place of constructive
Definitely
criticism, or was it maybe some other feeling of maybe the person's, they wish they could do it as well, or they...
No, I have no doubt that was constructive criticism, which made it way harder. Like, there was not me thinking they're saying this because this is their uncomfortable feeling.
Why would they say that? What grounds would they have for saying that when you've done your courses, you've read the books, you've worked with people? Where is it actually coming from?
I think it's quite simple. Like, I really do. I think in this country in particular, we are uncomfortable with people being uncomfortable and it not being perfect and it looking a bit off. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
And
exactly
it was all of that. It was shit. It was shite. I look back at it going, holy.
So if you're not producing Hollywood stuff, what are you doing?
What are you doing? You've got all the books. You got this, like, you're damaging what you've created. And I got lots of that.
So what was your mindset at that time? Were you did you have to take a moment and reflect and pull yourself together, or did you just try to brush it off and crack on?
I'm talking to you about it now, which would give you some indication of how much I would have thought about it then.
Right. Yeah, it's still there.
It's still there. And I think about this all the time. I am a relatively, I'm not crediting myself as an early adopter from an entrepreneurial perspective, but I'm a relatively, if I see an opportunity in something and I think that this is worth pursuing, I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
And you got to ask yourself the questions, and this is what you do. Why am I doing it? Is this a risk worth taking? Is this who I am? Is this staying true to what I'm trying to develop and communicate? And yeah, it's not perfect, but are you going to stick with it? Or are you just going to jump ship because you got a bit of criticism? So you have those internal conversations and then you make a decision.
You must be much more comfortable dealing with it now because everyone's got a comment on Instagram, right? Everyone's got feedback.
Well, I've told this story quite a few times. We did the Room to Improve last year, coming up to a year ago now. I don't know, do you know this? Did you know I got a bit of slack?
No.
You're out of the country, so maybe you didn't see my post or you didn't see this, but I'm sure people will Google this now after if they're listening.
Yeah.
So I had a conversation with my wife in the 2 weeks before it went out on live TV, not live TV, but it went out on TV that we were doing the Room to Improve, and I said, look, I just want you to be ready because this is going out to God knows the guts of 1 million people. Not everybody is going to go, great stuff, happy Christmas.
Yeah, well done.
Well done, this is brilliant.
Congrats. Can I buy the book?
Can I buy the book? This is amazing. People will criticize our hair, all of this. And I was very much like, I've been putting myself out here for quite some time. I'm ready, I wasn't. And what happened was, whatever way people viewed it was that I was this kind of person who was too into myself, and that my wife was the one that was the brains behind the operation, and why was I making the thing about me? It was very negative. But there was this stuff that came out in a lot of the trash media. Room to Improve your husband.
Oh, right.
And I got a lot of shit.
That's so mean, isn't it?
Oh, I got so much shit. Like, people were commenting under my post, you're just a prick and you're just a dick. And like, I got a lot of stuff. And then there was one night about 3 weeks or so, 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, like, I had decided to avoid all social media.
Yeah.
But late one night, I couldn't sleep. And I'm never on my phone at nighttime. It's just not what I do. But somebody sent me a link to a form. And they thought, they must have just read the first thing and thought, this is funny, I'll send it to Daniel.
Right.
And then I was like, what the fuck are they sending me this for? And then I started reading. And the stuff that was being said.
Just loads of nasty comments.
Keyboard warriors. That relationship would be over by the end of the year. She'll leave him. Like, it was really personal stuff. And then, like, I didn't sleep that well that night or the next night. And then something happened. Something switched.
Go on.
And I just realized, all I kept thinking about was, why would they? How? I went back and watched it twice. Watched I was like, I don't really see it.
What are they talking about?
And then I was like, hang on a second. That's just who I am. You know, whatever way that they view it, that's the way they've interpreted it. That's got nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
Nothing. But I actually could put the words to it. And I've said this a few times. I am so grateful now because I am so much stronger for it.
Yeah. For all these experiences, getting this criticism and having these people take pops at you.
It's cliche, but I mean, when you actually believe it.
Yeah.
There's not like the lip service that I was paying before it. Very different when you go out and people really do judge you, and you can, like, because initially there's a processing to it, but that you really do have the ability to process it and just laugh about it.
Yeah. I mean, people judge themselves. They judge other people. They talk negatively about other people. They talk negatively about themselves. Yeah, I always wonder how much they're really thinking deep, thoughtful thoughts about these things, or if they're just saying, you know what, he's put himself out there. I'm gonna drag him back down. From my perspective, I'm on the total opposite of the sphere. I don't get any criticism, and then I feel like, well, that's because no one knows about my stuff. Like, so for me, it's like a negative KPI. It's like, if I'm not putting myself out there enough, and if I'm not trying to publish and promote things, I'm not getting any criticism. So then I'm obviously not like shouting loud enough. Do you know what I mean? I feel like criticism would be a good KPI of actually trying to go outside my comfort zone and actually reaching some people and actually making an impact, right? Because no one's ever going to agree with everything we say or do.
No, of course not.
In no way. Maybe if we're lucky, we'll get 50-50, or like 60-40. But it's like, that's why it feels like that criticism feels like something nearly to be, a good KPI of. Do you know what I mean? I absolutely.
I have been at one of Stephen Diary of a CEO.
Stephen Bartlett.
Yeah. Is that one of his talks?
Oh, great.
And one of the things he said was the one thing you don't want to be is vanilla or wallpaper.
Yeah.
Where you're just part of the background and nobody cares. People, it's just not good for business. It's not good for marketing. And he said, if people are talking about your opinion on something, that's valuable. Now, this goes right back to the discomfort thing. I know this is not like, again, I want to say this in the right context. I could have far more engagement and an even bigger following if I took more risk and I was more controversial. I can see how people feed off negativity, and I know where my threshold is. I don't want to provoke people.
You don't want to provoke, but is there more things you want to say that are maybe more controversial that you really believe?
Definitely.
So what's the friction there?
Context. I think if you could get people in the room and talk about things like I did it. I actually, this is something that didn't really catch fire that I thought would. I've been in some very heated discussions about time and how people use time as an excuse. Mm-hmm. And I have regularly seen the most, like, people who are running multiple businesses and families are still in making incredible decisions for their health. Mm-hmm. You know, so time is, so it's that kind of very simple where I would like to be able to challenge people more around certain things like that. But like, I don't want to spend my time responding to people either.
Why do you have to?
No, I don't. Yeah. No, but it's like
you're gonna get criticized either way.
You're going to get criticized either way. So I guess what I'm just trying to say is, it's not that I'm comfortable, but I'm very clear on how I want to use my platform.
Yeah.
I absolutely want it to evolve, and I don't want it to be stagnant, but I don't want it to be used as I want it to be predominantly positive, and I want it to be predominantly practical and evidence-based, and there to be a bit of fun about it, because they're my values.
Yeah, that sounds great. Sounds beautiful. And I've seen recently, maybe during the week or in the last 10 days anyway, for sure, there's been a little bit of an update or a tweak to the brand.
Yeah, it's definitely more than a tweak. And I've written a little bit about this, that at the very beginning, 2012, the business was called Flickr. So the whole concept of fast moving, healthy food and imagery. 2018, then, 5-6 years later, I realized that it just wasn't enough to represent what we do. It became Davey Nutrition. And that's 5 years ago. And then now, even if you listen to this conversation, I felt like Davey Nutrition and nutrition is too narrow. And that in an awful lot of contexts, it really doesn't fully represent where I am and where I'm going. And I haven't figured out exactly what the right way is to project the services and the business and the concepts that we do. I mean, just beforehand, you were asking me about the events that we do, the one-to-ones that I have, where I'm working, the type of things that I talk about when I'm speaking in corporate events. And for the moment, Daniel Davey is a better place to be.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about those events that you run? The camps, the performance camps. What's the right term? Performance camps? Weekends?
I think so. I think that's a good name. The origin comes from my time working in professional sport and thinking back over some of the best moments outside of those big wins that we had, and they were where we were away together, outside of Ireland or in Ireland, down in Clare and remote places. And it was just time that was spent having the crack, like cooking together and training together and sea swims, and there was the match and there was the night out. And it was a brilliant experience. And there was deep learning. Like, everyone came away from those camps feeling more connected to each other and more connected to the game plan. So I always had this thought, what would it be like to give people an opportunity to live like that and to experience what that feels like? Now, what they were meant to be versus what they are and what people are saying they are is turning out to be something very different. And that's also an evolution and very rewarding. But it is around this experience of like-minded people and what it feels like to be in that space and realize the things that are holding you back and how much more people are capable of. That's the tapping into greater potential.
Do you think it's having space on a few days away? Is it being prompted and provoked with these deep questions, or is it, I suppose, lots of time for reflection, maybe long walks or sea swims, or you're outside your normal routine and your normal distractions? Maybe all.
It's definitely not one thing. And I remember one of the girls that came on our very first one, she told me on the third day that, this is on the third day of the event, that we were doing this introduction on the very first day, and she said she didn't want to come out of her room.
Oh, wow.
She was like, what am I doing? She said she even considered seeing was there a flight that she could get home. But by the end of it, she said, I don't want to go home. You know,
what was going on? Just nervous? Or
yeah.
Nervous.
And that's consistent.
Well,
everybody comes going, what have I done? What I've come, who are these people? What will this be like? What have I got myself in for? I won't be able for this. Oh, shit. And then people, like, I talk about this all the time. Like that woman I'm telling you about, she left her job and set up her own business.
what?
She's absolutely flying.
Out of this?
Yeah, well, no, I'm not saying...
No, but it was an influence.
It was an influence.
Yeah.
It was a factor in her realizing, I can do this shit. I can do this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, there's people that are promoted. There's been, out of the event this year, there was 15 people. 4 people have either been promoted or changed jobs.
That's phenomenal.
Yes, it's heard.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah. and everyone else getting, confidence boosts and deep learnings and realizations as well. When I look at your marketing online though, I keep thinking people think this is like 100% sport, and that they're all going to like go into high performance sport after that.
Yeah. No. I'll tell you what's so interesting. I was about to take my phone out there and show you a photo. Yeah, I will, because it's very special. It really is. The group in Portugal have met up 3 times.
Oh, really?
Yes. And this was them at Sea to Summit last weekend.
Oh, fantastic. This is like a proper bonding session then.
Yeah, and my sister, who's never been on any of these type of things, is in the middle of them.
If you're like encouraging someone who's thinking, I don't see myself as because it's called Live Like an Athlete, right?
Yeah, I think it's important to distinguish that the people who do come, it's not that they have no training experience. Like they are able to train. I think that's important to say. Like, you're not going from zero to. It would be a challenge to not be doing any exercise and then come and train twice a day. And so, but if you regularly train, this would be no problem. Yeah. It's about where you are in life. It's about your state of mind. A lot of people come. There's quite a few single people come who don't want to go on the piss and want to have an experience around learning and their health and have fun. And don't get me wrong, of course we go out as well, but it's like, that's not the main thing.
Yeah. That's great. Well, it's nice that there's these other options apart from just going out on the piss to socialize with people and to do some personal development. You don't have to have a deep and meaningful at 4 a.m. Outside the bar to do some personal development.
Exactly.
Can I ask there's obviously tons and tons of people are interested in nutrition, and then probably lots of those people are interested in becoming nutritionists at some point. You've had this question a million times. Daniel, what should I do if I want to become a nutritionist? Yeah, I'm sure you've condensed your advice down to some key points.
The most important point is it's not about your interest in nutrition. It's about your interest in helping others with their nutrition. And there's a big differentiation. You have to want to help others, because that's the study of people. That's about relationships and connection and listening. And people are attracted to the space because they train and they love food and they're foodies. And like, I'm not a foodie. I'm not even with the recipe books, the recipes are so simple. They're not like what a chef would create. So it's about that. And it's about understanding that it's complex and there's a huge psychology associated with all of these decisions. And you have to be so comfortable with going on a journey with people around this. And then I always mention that it's a tough industry. You know, there's not that many jobs as nutritionists. It's if you become a dietitian, you generally go into practice or a clinical setting in a hospital, or you're working in a clinic. From a nutrition perspective, there's a lot of people going into industry, and then it's so you have to be quite entrepreneurial, and that part is not you know, you're not well supported in college through that part.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? A lot of the college programs, they'll just be like, here's 100% of the topic, nutrition in this case, right? And then after that, best of luck with the business
and the marketing and
the sales and the promotion. Yeah. So I guess it's fair to say the marketing and sales is a key part of being a nutritionist, and the promotion and getting comfortable with that. That's something you communicate with your team to, you know, really get comfortable promoting themselves and putting themselves out there. And
did we talk about this?
No.
Oh, it's massive.
Yeah, okay.
No, it's absolutely huge. I thought that you had set that question up because
I know. Well, I've seen you know, your team are hosting some webinars and some some sessions online. So whenever I see that, like I know, like I do those things as well. So I know the struggle of like setting up the camera and you just have this like little flickering light, and then it's just like you and the camera, and it can be a little bit intimidating or off-putting. Yeah. Especially because if you're doing something online, you get zero feedback.
I know.
You've no faces to look at. You don't know if anything is landing, and people are more hesitant to ask questions.
Yeah. So Eva and Gemma are, you know, they're very comfortable now, but you would have seen the start, and it's the same for everybody. You challenge them about presenting online, putting their face and putting their words, the things that they really care about out there. That's a process. And it's so funny. In one of my one-to-ones with Lauren, she's still in college. Lauren is a diamond, just brilliant. And she's going to be a brilliant performance nutritionist, and she's at the beginning of her career. But I've started to she started to share little pieces online, and I'm encouraging her to put a little bit more context to what she's putting out online, because that's where the real value is for people thinking about how, so you're going on your run and you're eating this bagel with banana. Why? Just give a little bit of, no, I can't.
What?
But she will, and she's going to be brilliant because she's got super energy and awareness and personality, and that'll come. But I find this part very amusing at this early stage because everybody has the same reaction.
You've been there too.
Been there.
And the context is teaching. The context is the teaching people why they're doing what they're doing around nutrition. Is that right?
Absolutely. Right. It's the education.
Right.
And if you can do that, and it just becomes about the education, and you remove, and that's the thing, that's what facilitates the growth. So it's not about how I look or you look. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you say it perfectly. It's that you get better at communicating the messages. Mm-hmm. And then once it's about you communicating that message, you're reflecting on a different thing. Mm. So when I reflect on all of my videos, what I'm looking for is that the right t-shirt, or have I got bedhead? That stuff is irrelevant. Of course we get it. It's social media. Of course you can't do it sitting on a bucket. But you what I critique is, did I get the information in there? Is that clear? Mm. And then that becomes your focus.
Mm. Do you feel pressure to be like super entertaining and all singing, all dancing on social media? Or do you feel like I can just say what I want to say the way I want to say it?
That's a really good question, because people, 94%, actually, is it higher? Is it 97%? Maybe you know this number, are on social media. There's a recent piece of research done on it. Mm-hmm. It's either 94 or 97% are on it for entertainment.
Yeah, right.
So I know that.
And that's tapping into these trends, you know, where people are doing mad stuff in trends. And like, if you're not in that trend, then you're not.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the answer is that I have to acknowledge that there's an entertainment part of it. I didn't know that this was going to come out of me, but both of my parents were actors. My dad was a director before he passed away 3 years ago. But I come from an incredibly creative family, and I would have been asked my whole life, when am I stepping on stage?
Really?
Yeah. And the reason I didn't was because everybody knew Peter Davey, and I was never going to live up to it no matter what. But there is a theatrical and creative vein in me that I would like to express that I haven't yet. Yeah. But it goes back to that thing that we would have talked about a little bit earlier. I don't want to undermine my message, but that will have to come out at some point.
Yeah. Maybe the next room to improve.
Probably not the room to improve, but I often think about that. That's something that I think about. But yeah, we'll get there.
You'll get there. Baby steps. I suppose if you're thinking of, I'm really interested on the corporate workshops, because I wonder how, when you get called to do a corporate workshop, how you can condense all of this information down into something that they're going to say that was useful, entertaining, and that was something that we want to put on stage. That must be a big challenge, because you want to be authentic to yourself. You want to get your message across, and you're trying to fit into the mold of whatever company asks you. Or maybe I've got that wrong.
You've got 1 hour, and people are coming hoping to learn something and hoping to get something out of a session. People are really busy. They have a lot on their plate, and I'm very conscious of all of that. So I go in to try and capture some moments and to get people to think. And that is my aim and objective. You're not changing the way people live in a collective session in an hour, but you can give them some really strong things to think about if you present well.
Nice.
And that's what I do. I try to capture people's attention, and I try to give them a really good sense of my intention of making a small difference in the time that I have with them. And that's a real commitment. And that's what I try to live up to every time I go into those rooms.
That makes tons of sense. Well, in many ways, that's the gift that keeps on giving. If you can provoke good questions for them to ask themselves and tools for them to go away and do deeper reflection, that hour becomes 10 hours or becomes 20 hours, right? Rather than just something they feel they can Google.
But I still get asked, is it 1 egg or 2?
Yeah.
Is it low fat or Greek yogurt?
You must feel your heart sinks in those moments. It just sinks a little bit.
It happened even this week. It happened. I was even telling somebody after the session about my overall experience having this conversation, and the guy turned around to me. He said, "It's 4 eggs a day too many." I'm like, how did you fucking miss the point? He just sat in a session with me for the last hour and 20 minutes.
Incredible.
And we talked about the preparation, and we talked about,
you were there, weren't you?
You were there.
Right? Or were you somewhere else? Or it's just that I want to be told my answer specifically.
And if you're listening,
you're listening, Tim out there in Clonskeagh.
Don't worry about the 2 eggs, and it'll all even itself out if you're making good decisions.
There's so much of that, isn't there? That everyone's got their keto, paleo, carnivore, vegan, and there's probably like another 5 or 6 breakaways from all of that sort of stuff. Do you stick to the guiding principles, or do you say, well, inside of that you can eat whatever you want? Like, do you say you really can't be on any of those types of strict diets, or is it more like, if you do these guiding principles, if you follow these guiding principles within any of those, you're going to be okay?
That's, in very simple terms, that's the answer.
Yeah.
We have a very simple hierarchy to achieve within calories, macronutrients, micronutrients, meal timing. and supplements.
Yeah.
And once we achieve that on a daily basis, doesn't matter how we do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I did a video once. There was something called the Ornish diet or something like that.
Okay.
And it's where what's Chris Martin or something like that. I probably would misquote it. 1 meal a day.
Okay.
So 2,000 or 2,200 calories in one day. And that was the way they were living, and that was the secret to longevity.
Right.
And you're going, oh my God, how miserable would that be? You know, just 1 meal course a day. Can that be done? Yeah, sure. If that's what you want to do.
And when do you have it?
When do you have
breakfast?
Right. So you can have in one meal, you could sit down for 2 hours and eat your whole calorie needs and nutrient needs. You're good. If that's the way you want to live.
Yeah, yeah.
But what is the most practical way that you can meet your nutrient needs with the life that you're living?
And also, like, what is the impact of that? Like, is it going to give you 15% extra on your performance, or 15 quality years, or 10 quality years to your life?
Yeah.
Or is it just this tiny, let's say it's 100% true, is it just this tiny incremental difference that you get? Or is it a fad? Before we wrap up, you might indulge me by answering a question that I get asked all the time.
Okay.
I'm a vegan.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I've become vegan in the last year, vegetarian for about 4 or 5 years before that, right? So as a nutritionist, you can probably guess what question I get asked all the time.
Yes.
So if you could please help, I know the answer, but I would like everyone else to hear the answer from someone who's qualified. How do you get your protein?
Yeah. How do you get your B12? How do you get... There's a really interesting insight you probably don't know about, because we haven't talked well, we've reconnected, but we haven't talked in a while. The postgrad that I told you about, maybe you do know, maybe you've really done your research.
Good.
I did it on the conversion of somebody, an elite athlete in Dublin, who converted from an omnivore diet to a vegan diet. We studied him over the course of the season, and we tracked all of his data.
Go on.
So there's no question that you can meet all of your nutrient needs, even at the highest end of sport. In fact, some of his numbers overall improved. So let's leave metabolic output and things like that aside, but the kind of the distances covered and meters per second and power, and even his body composition.
Really?
Yeah, like there was elements of that improved. Now, he was defiant because I defied him. And I said, I don't know if this is a good idea. It hasn't been done. There's not much research. And he said, no, this is what I'm going to do, and I want you to help me. So all of the indicators were incredibly positive. However, it was an enormous amount of work.
Yep.
There was an awful lot of extra detail required in his planning and in his organization.
Mm-hmm.
And there was also a couple of sticky periods around competition where he overconsumed fiber.
Right.
And had digestive issues because of the volumes of food and the volumes of fiber. Because if you're vegan and you're eating an awful lot of extra pulses and grains and things like that, his fiber content doubled, and that's very problematic if you're doing a lot of intense exercise.
Yeah. So doable, but a little bit more complex.
Absolutely. And he had me to support him. Now, to answer your question, because we haven't answered it, there's loads of options. Of course there is. You need to combine your proteins at each main meal, which is not what an omnivore needs to do. Mm-hmm. So you need to combine your oats and seeds and grains at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Mm-hmm. And you have to, when I say supplement, I mean it could be a smoothie that you're making where you're really focusing on more protein-rich foods if you've got higher protein needs. Yeah. But tofu, alternative products that are now out there, there's loads of them. There's alternative to meat products.
Lentils, beans, quinoa.
It can all be achieved. I mean, there's no doubt, there's no question. But to do it well, to do it consistently, And of course, you also need B12.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be supplementing with B12, supplementing with vitamin D. Things like zinc and omega-3, you also need to watch out for because you're not eating fish.
Yeah.
And we don't convert our healthy fats from things like flaxseed and nuts just quite as well. So we need to be so much more, as you know.
That is beautiful. Thank you for that very detailed answer. It's nice and reassuring because you just get asked that all the time, right? All the time, and there is an answer. I'm very interested in this athlete that you talk about, because I know probably someone listening to this will say, well, we don't know if that was because of the diet or, something, because his performance or his body composition was better, certain other factors were better. How much of it could you put down to diet versus, let's say, other factors like increasing general focus?
That was huge. I mean, there's no question. We talked about it. It's in my reflections.
Okay.
He dialed it in.
Wow.
He became more focused because the risks, all the eyes were on him. Mm-hmm. He had put this out to the playing group. He was eating different meals. He was eating different foods. The conversations was different. If his performances dipped, there would have been serious issues. Mm-hmm. So there's no question the margin for error was so much. There was so much more at stake. He couldn't not be prepared compared to the same way another athlete who just taking whatever meal is presented to them.
Do you think that influenced the group then to maybe say, well,
it did.
Yeah.
Oh no, it did.
Hold on. Let's see what's going on.
And they did. Like
there's a level of awareness. I think
it is. But it was also like that particular Dublin group, and not apart from their success, they had a huge influence on me personally. They were the first group of people I was truly myself to. And they recognized, even when I made mistakes, that I was making mistakes with the intention of trying to help. And I can't tell you what that feels like, to have people support you or got your back. So it's the same kind of thing with that athlete and that person and that environment. You're not you're not really questioning his decisions. It wasn't egotistical. It was for the right reasons he was doing it. And when it is for the right reasons, people are generally supportive.
Makes such a difference if you feel you're part of a supportive community.
Yes.
You've got that psychological safety and that trust around you.
Yeah, of course there's loads of jokes and all that sort of stuff, but
there
was a real sense of, hang on a second, the numbers not lying here either.
Does that change the way you think about it as a nutritionist? It's tricky because you come from a farming background.
Well, being honest with you, Ronan, it doesn't, because I have always, I don't believe you need to go as far as becoming vegan to get the results that he did. I think that we need to eat more fruit and vegetables.
More plant-based.
And more plant-based.
Yeah, I think plant-based is a good way to...
Plant-based is a good way to go for the environment. I need to I am mindful, I am from a farmer background. What I'm saying is that we need to have more emphasis on fruit and vegetables in general society. It's not that meat can't be a part of that, or dairy. Dairy makes up a big part of my diet, my athlete's diet, whatever. But the more important question is, what can we learn from it?
Yeah.
And how can we make better overall decisions about the way that we eat?
Yeah.
And it's not depending on convenience foods, and it's not depending on heavily processed foods and what we get in the shop on the corner.
Yeah. Makes tons of sense, right? Makes tons of sense. It's all around the context as well, and the individual and their background and stuff like that. There's a couple of different factors.
Of course.
This has been wonderful.
Yeah, it's been absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I feel you've scratched a few of those nutrition itches, and I love hearing your journey and where you've come. And it's fantastic to see you go from taking photos in the office in Ballycool and in Blanchardstown to writing, how many, 2 cookbooks now, is it?
Yeah. Not to correct you, but they're as equally as important as nutrition books as well.
And nutritional cookbooks.
Yeah, they are. They're nutrition recipe books.
Nutrition recipes, yeah.
I feel, particularly in the second one, which I put an awful lot of time into, that's missed. People will skip the first 75 pages and just go to the recipes. And that's hard because if you skip in that part, then you're not understanding how the recipes fit in.
Comes back down to that thing, education versus entertainment.
Exactly. Or just opening and, oh, that looks nice because it's got lots of chocolate.
Yeah. And like, surely if I eat this chocolate treat that the nutritionist, I'm going to be an elite athlete, right? Not read those first 75 pages of nutritional advice.
Skip all the stuff that I talk about in terms of self-talk and vision and getting that kind of mental clarity and non-negotiable behaviors and intentions and all that.
We love shortcuts.
We do.
We love shortcuts.
And we will forever. And we do and I do in maybe in other ways too. But a client of mine recently said, he said, you've been saying something to me quite a bit about figuring stuff out. I said, yeah. He says, a great way of putting it. I said, you have to enjoy trying to figure this stuff out. And I do.
Got to enjoy that journey, right? I think that is a perfect place to finish. Daniel, thanks so much for coming in. I know you're super busy. I really appreciate your time, your insights. And I've genuinely been looking forward to this for like a long time. I would say a couple of years because I've always had these questions in the back of my head.
Yeah, me too.
And I was like, the next time I get Daniel.
Why don't we do it again?
Let's do it again. I would love to.
Yeah, let's do it again. Good stuff. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ron.